When I came to town, I was hungry to produce. I was on the hunt for bands and people to collaborate with. Anyone who would let me be around and work, I would say yes and serve them. That's the best start is, yes, I can figure that out.
Before jumping in, I'm 6 mixes deep on the template.
Yeah.
It's bonkers, dude. It's bonk. I love it.
I think I said this the other day, but it's supposed to be the cooking mise en place of a professional with lots and lots of hours in that kitchen. So you're getting to see why I have set it up the way that I do. Like there's a reason and intentionality to where I've honed it to where, oh, instead of this being 2 feet away, I'm going to make it 1 foot away, put it here, bigger bowl, this thing here, this thing here. And there's the thought process of like tweaking things over many, many years. It's like people can just glean from that instantaneously with a video and a set of files. So has that kind of been your experience with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was overwhelming at first, clearly, because you're looking at something that somebody else made. But
it is
when I sat there and I broke it down, I was like, okay, because I was playing with a signal generator, just seeing where things were going. I was like, okay, I need to just get a mix in here. And once I did that, I was like, it's so easy. It makes total sense because it's a lot of the things that I already do. It's just you've taken it so much further. I was like, why didn't I do this from the beginning? So it makes complete sense, and I follow it. And automation with it is so easy because everything's right there. It's like I've changed out a lot of the things to like the tools that I use, obviously, but man, I can't wait to once the Atmos room's ready to take those in there and just see what happens. And
yeah,
that's a whole.
I obviously think the thing that people are going to be blown away with is the ability to do both at the same time, and it's just set up right there, you know.
Yeah,
it's like if you're already seeing a benefit from the stereo workflow, being able to make a decision for stereo and then go do Atmos and you're move on. Like I think it's a game changer. So I'm excited. I'm giddy.
So we were going to talk about like the admin stuff. So this is a conversation I feel like you don't see a whole lot of people have, and when I talk about it, it's very one-sided. And this whole conversation started because the whole thing with Honey and PayPal, and I was like, I need to switch because I use PayPal to run my entire business, and for the longest time I've been like, this is great, I love it. I could continue to do that, but looking through your documents in your template and the video you have of your business log is pretty eye-opening. So sitting and talking about this, like if somebody wants to start it up, like I would love to kind of approach this. Maybe we could touch like holistically on what you're doing, then maybe back it up from like a 30,000 foot view, like approaching this from somebody getting started. And then I'm also really interested to see if we can talk about like what did this look like when you started, and then what were the things that led you to kind of track it the way you do now. And then selfishly, I have some questions that just in my own practice that I kind of want to change. Does that all sound good?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Man, so based on what you're saying, I might just start like talking out loud and see if this answers or goes down the path that you were asking about.
Yeah, go for it.
We probably have touched on this, that I see myself as a problem solver who like looks for the needs of my community and then hunts for a way to solve those needs. And right now it just happens to be mixing. Like I think God developed that skill set and opened those doors to where that's the way I'm serving people most right now. But the mindset of service and orienting your business to serve people, for me, means good organization, like, and a good assessment of where you are, what skills you have to offer people, and then like building your business around it and being knowledgeable about how these things connect. So there's plenty of people who will come to town and they're like, I want to mix. I want to be a mix engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's great, man. Is that the need? Like, is the need for people to hire you as a mix engineer, or do you need to cut your teeth serving a mix engineer as an assistant for a while? Do you need to cut your teeth, you know, prepping and assisting on tracking sessions? Do you need to get in with bands who might trust you to mix their stuff? Like that may mean getting on the road with them. So looking at it more from a sense of who needs what and how am I best equipped to serve that need. So then once you like have done that, once you've recognized those things in your life, I think it's worth it to organize those thoughts as a business and say, I'm setting up an LLC or in my case, once you get to a certain point, you need to move to an S Corp instead of an LLC, because there are tax benefits to an S Corp that an LLC doesn't have. And so,
Selfishly, I want to ask you about that. I'm going to write that down.
well, I'll pinpoint some things that LLCs can rent from themselves. So let's say you, like I have a studio room behind my house where my wife is the landlord of the studio, and my business pays my wife a rental,
Yeah.
which is rental income, which is deducted from the business, but a rental income is different than self-employed income. The S corp really helps separate that self-employment tax that gets dumped on LLCs and sole proprietors. Um, and you can, if there's profit, you can keep it in the business, and it's not taxed at the same rate as that whatever you paid yourself, the self-employment tax. I'm not a CPA. I just know at some point there is a benefit to switching over to a S corp. Um, and yeah, a good CPA that'll cost you somewhere between 300 to 500 a year. Like, forget about TurboTax, forget about H&R Block and all the people who prepare your taxes for you.
Yeah.
300 to 500 for a really good CPA will save you thousands. I mean, like thousands, maybe 10,000 or more. So you need to invest in a good CPA who can help build that S corp when the time comes. So that may be getting ahead, but like starting the business itself, like make it a business. Don't just let it be sole proprietor. Branding, I mean, I'm not great at that, but these days younger people are better at branding, I think, than we were. There's AI tools to help you do this. Like, it's easier than ever to like brand yourself and get yourself out there. But I'd say start simple. Like, don't kick the door down like a Kool-Aid man saying, hey, I'm here, this is what I do. Again, approach things humbly in looking for the needs, but have some kind of landing page and branding for people to like know who you are and what you do and how you can meet their need, how you can serve them and solve their problems.
Well, even to that point, real quick to latch onto that, it's even some people who do want to start, they see even that approach of like starting an LLC or making it an actual business, which that's when you can start to write off your expenses. They see that as like this big scary thing, and honestly, it's way easier than we all make it out to be. Like, just talk to someone, ask questions.
It's easier than you think once you get over the hump of it. Like, it is
Yes.
daunting to think about, but again, with a good CPA, or LegalZoom is another thing. Like, LegalZoom will do a lot of this for you, but paying a couple $100 up front to some experts to help you navigate those waters saves you so much time and effort in the long run. It's
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's the same, like, this may be the same analogy for gear, for as you scale and grow your business. I don't expect a contractor to come to my house with a hand shovel and a hammer and build me a house. Like, they're going to come equipped with big old machinery that they know gets the job done better. As someone getting into the business, no, you're not going to go buy yourself a Bobcat. But what you're going to do is, the path to the Bobcat. You can look and go, oh, it's time for me to grow beyond the hammer. It's time for me to get these tools and like scale. And yeah, that's a scary leap in investment, but the understanding of what comes on the back end of having made that investment is like, that's how you scale, is taking those risks of like, now it's time to make this jump. You just have to jump. That's something.
Mm-hmm. So getting started in that. So if you could put yourself back in that situation when you did start, because now, and I'm sure this is probably easier for me, or even if this was me, somebody else looking at me doing this. So this might be hard to answer yourself, but I can see all these things that you're doing. I see the template, the documents, all this stuff, like what you're doing now, and that's your day to day. How does that differ from what you did when you started? And were there like some like holy crap moments that made you like reevaluate things, or have you always kind of approached it like this?
So I know that this answer is going to have some chapters to it. And what I'll say is, when I came to town, I was hungry to produce. And so I was on the hunt for bands and people to collaborate with, but it was more so anyone who would let me be around and work, I would say yes and serve them. So I think that's the best start, is yes, I can figure that out. Like, position yourself around people who could use your help, but don't eat away at them pesteringly. Just like, make it known, this is why I'm here. I've got this attitude about it. Here are my goals. I'm ready to serve. And if you do that for enough people, someone is going to bite. Like, someone's going to say, yes, I'll give you a chance this day doing this thing, and just kill it doing that thing. Like, your ability to be responsible with a little speaks to how you can be responsible with a lot. So like, if they ask you to take out the trash, let it be the best, most immaculate takeout of trash that anyone's ever seen. And they're gonna be like, dang man, like, he walks around the studio like he owns it. Like, he loves it, that he's putting that much love and care into cleaning up the studio space. And he even came to me and said, hey, I saw that this was out of place. Do you mind if I organize this for you? And I'll make sure I write out a chart so you know where everything is organized. Like, it'll be so intuitive. And then kill it at that. And you just take these little steps and bites. And that's kind of what I did for a few different people. One of which being Sean Moffat, who was like, hey man, can you sample replace these drums manually by hand? Like, tab transient samples before there was trigger.
Oh yeah.
And so I did that, and I got into a rhythm, and I was like, this is my method for doing this. Like, this is my order. I actually did it from the back to the front, so that when you tab to it, like, and you hit paste, like, if you were to do that from the front, your paste might overlap another transient. Mm-hmm. And so you'd have to like go backward and like scrub it back, go to the next transient. So in order to just get in a flow of pasting, I went from back to front, and knew the rhythm of about how often that tab would catch the wrong thing. And I just got really good at bop bop paste, bop bop paste, bop bop bop. Like, it was a rhythm. It was drumming almost.
Yeah. Oh, I remember those days.
But it was a method. Go from the back, select all, remove the audio that's in between, like commit new, check your work, like all that stuff. And so that was the start of me creating methods for myself, which I think this is like the next chapter, I'd say, is like, as you find yourself repeating work, like, analyze what you're doing and learn how to shift the order of like, okay, well, if I did this first, or I did this way, it sets me up well to go into this thing, which sets me up well to go into this thing. Now this task has a beginning, middle, end, like, method. And over time, you start to hone that down, find new new and better ways of doing it, but you at least establish this is what I can do. It's worth this amount of time, and I can knock out like preps. Yes, preps might be different song to song, but generally the method is here's tracks that come in. I want them to look the same, be routed the same, be in the same order, and have these things on them. So that's basically just a checklist. Like, be organized enough to create a checklist and say, I'm going to do this thing first, import. I'm going to do this thing next, order. I'm going to color next. I'm going to do this. If you want to use SoundFlow to do this, like, there are so many tools. The biggest key is repetition and like intentional method. So like picking how you do it and then honing it. See if it works, see if it doesn't work, tweak some things and repeat over and over and over again, and you get really fast. So that was kind of my thing starting out, is like I made these methods for myself and I learned how to get faster and faster and faster, which opened up my capacity to do more for people. So prep turned into archiving for him. So there was a method of, we need these 5 different mix versions for the client, the label, make those. So it's like, all right, I can print this and this, like acapella, like maybe I can print that and the BGV at the same time through this sidechain. Like there was a lot of weird methods that I tried out. Some worked, some didn't work, but I had a method for it. So for me, a lot of those methods came first. But going back to the business creation, what I would say matters a lot is your own mission statement, your own ethos, your own goals. Because these methods are great. Do that for sure. But it's kind of aimless if you don't have what every business ever has had, which is a mission statement, like ethos. It feels formal, like especially for us audio people. I think like it feels weird to be formal sometimes, but like I have a mission statement that talks about my purpose in solving people's problems, the ethos of why I do any of that in the first place, and then goals that are career defining goals. Like I would love for this to happen, and then some like this year I would love to see these things happen and action toward it. So not only do I want these things to happen, like I want to, like this year I want to focus more on A&R. Okay. So I'm going to seek out some bands or artists that I'm interested in to help develop their sound, potentially produce a record for them, and see their followers grow from, maybe it's like 50%, see their followers grow by at least 50%, if not more, by the end of the year, developing them. So the goal is
cool.
3. The goal is find 3 people and develop them as an A&R person. But the action is like reach out to them in this way, with this plan, with these metrics. So if you can't tell already, I feel like I straddle the worlds of type A and type B, or brain, where like turn on the organizational, very structured, near OCD side of things. But then I mean I can turn knobs. I can just get weird and want to create and all of that. So like tying those together, I know that I can serve people, helping them build that bridge, you know, between the creative and the organizational.
Well, that's always been such an interesting thing. Like doing this job, if you do it for a long enough time, you have to have aspects of both of those types of personality. You have to just get into a flow state and create and be an artist. But then if you want this to be sustainable, there has to be some level of business acumen and some systems in place to make that work. I've just never seen anybody do it to an extent where like I feel I've done this for a while, not as long as a lot of other people, but like I look at what you're doing, I'm like, I want to implement all of this because it makes so much sense. And it tickles that part of my brain where I'm like, control. So
and the things that I've thought about, it has been an evolution. It didn't come all at once. But part of the reason why I got so organized is because the guy I was working for, Sean Moffat, was incredibly disorganized. And
Hmm.
so it was kind of left to me to create his world for him, like create the prep structure. What does it look like to have things uniform? What do our folders look like? Um, but then like dreaming up new ideas. I think we were probably the first in Nashville to do Dropbox as a like live back and forth thing. Most people with Dropbox at the time were just like, "Hey, I'm going to upload my files to you." And someone would pull it down from the cloud, put it on their drive and do that. But for me to keep from driving back and forth between his place, which was like 30 to 45 minutes from where I was like, I'm going to buy your two bus chain and your like summing and all that. So I invested. That's that, Bobcat leap. I
Mm-hmm.
invested, but then I was like, let's tie our hard drives together with Dropbox and put our entire project system on there. You close down a project and then I can open it up and create an archive, tweaks, whatever. And it was this new capacity, this new like map opened up on our RPG. Like like this whole new world of capacity opened up to where he like I don't have to take time to drive to him. I don't have to work at night. And he can now trust that whatever he closes down will open up on my machine the same way that it did for his. And so it's like we cloned, you know? And like thinking that way, like how can I solve this problem? Like instead of just being stuck with, well, this is how it is. I go in late at night and I archive these sessions and boy, I wish I was just mixing records. Like I see a lot of people with that attitude where they're just like disgruntled in the position they're in at the job they've been asked to do. And they're like, man, if I could just like, I don't understand why I don't get more mixing clients. And I mean, I think part of it's the attitude, but also just realize like you've been asked to serve where you are. So do the job, learn, but you have an opportunity to increase capacity. Like there's so many dudes in part-time audio jobs where you can spend 10 to 20 hours a week here and then like look for more problems to solve in that space. Like, oh, spend 5 or 10 extra hours on mix starts for the person after you've prepped it. Like, get really good at starting the mix and meeting their expectations for like balancing and gain staging. Like that's a smaller thing. We're not asking you to mix the whole song and it be just as good as the dude you're working for.
That's
But
such a quality of life thing, though.
dude, yeah, if you could polish stuff up just enough to where when he starts, it shaves 30 minutes to an hour off his start time. His 30 minutes to an hour is worth probably about, $300. Like depending on the mix rate that this guy has. We'll just say somewhere between 150 to $300. If you can save this dude that amount of time, he can be making that up in other mixes, saying yes to other mixes because he has increased capacity. Then maybe he'll pass some of that on to you for spending the time on it. You're both making more money. So seeing the world in that way of how do I serve where I am that yes prepares me for more, but it's the attitude of serving people. And I think by doing that, people come to you. Like the people in those circles that see you working that way, they're like, man, like this dude's doing all of that for you. Like, can he do some of that for me? Or like, could I get him to start a mix? Do you mind? Like if I use him on a mix? Or
Yeah.
I'm speaking in hypothetical scenarios, but
When it's totally real, though. I mean, there is that thing of, and we're kind of getting off a beaten path here, but I like where we're going. But if you're not happy where you are, you're not going to be happy where you're going. And like people see that. And with the music industry being as small as it is, if you have this attitude of constantly being unsatisfied, few people want to give you favors to get out of where you're at. Like if you just have to figure out how to be content and do the best work wherever you are, and then watch the opportunities wash over you. It's a hard thing to hear in the moments where you feel like you have no opportunities.
Yeah.
But it is totally true. But
Well, dude, a song that came out I think it was last year, 2024. Dave Barnes had like a big record come out where he studied the Beatles, and it sounds great. I love it. I'm pretty sure the title single from that is "Remember When," and the chorus jumps in, "Remember when you wanted everything you've got right now," and like thought once you had it, you would be happy. Like there's the whole song ahead of it, but I mean, it's so true that if your entire mindset is it's never enough, I've just got to get over here and I've just got to get over here, like one, you might be toiling in the wrong direction, or like this uphill battle that's just so hard, and that you're missing these opportunities that are coming your way because you're so focused on like, no, this next thing, and you're missing on the greatness of the present that you're in. But also, like, you get 10 or 15 years into a career and you realize, oh, this might be like the middle of my career. Like I'm in the middle now. Like even if I'm still mixing, which is unlikely because younger and younger guys are coming in, they're hungry, like they want to mix. Am I going to be mixing in 5 to 10 years at the rate that I am now? Like frequency of songs and like projects, or at the caliber? Like who knows? Like looking at other people's careers that have come before me, like very like Serban and CLA, like that's the 0.01% of
yeah.
engineers who have had a career where they've been on top for 40, 50 years, or sought out like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you just enjoy the present where you are and continue to serve. You have goals that take you in certain directions, but also just being very realistic that, okay, I'm at the 15-year mark. Like, is there another 15 years of this? Or how do I diversify what I do? How do I develop new skills to say yes to more open doors, and also say goodbye to other doors that have closed down? It's not just that doors get slammed in your face. It's that, oh, I've had this space for a bit and I see it moving on. Like I had to say that to assisting. I assisted Sean Moffat for years, and it was a very safe job. I probably could have done that till he retired or died. Like, but at some point you got to be like, I'm moving into this next stage. I have to say goodbye to this, which opens up capacity for more things. But it's a bit of dying to the safety of this thing. But eventually there does come a point when you've had your day, you've had your season, in the sense of what everyone would consider a successful career. I know that personally and like identity wise, there are a lot of us who hold our identity in other places and like aren't so fixated on achieving a certain thing within our career, except to provide well for our families, do something we love, like serve people, make great music. Like if those are your metrics by which you succeed, like that's going to be a very sustainable and life-giving career. But if you're like, I've got to be this many number ones and this Grammy thing, and I've got to, I've got to go to LA and compete and be sought out by all these people, like that's a lot of expectation you put on yourself. And man, 15 years into a career, like I can look at it and be like, well, I don't think I'm going to be that. I'm not going to be the next Serban. And I'm okay with that. Like saying I'm okay with that and going, what does the next 5 to 10 years hold? Potentially A&R, potentially developing, coaching. Maybe it's more mixing. Like that'd be great, God willing. But setting yourself up for the next season and being very aware of the needs of people and how you can serve that, dude. That's a huge like hurdle for people in their career.
And it hits home extra hard with right now because I mean I am exactly 15 years into what I'm doing, and I've had those same thoughts. And 2 days ago, I'm not going to say who it is. Um, this person texted me, and he's basically saying, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, appreciate you. I'm walking away." I'm not going to say what this person did. It's very related to what we do. And I was just shocked because I'm like, "You're not that old, man. Like, what's going on? Why?" He's like, I'm not as good as I used to be. My Everybody coming up below me wants it way more. I'm tired. I'm like, wow. So that's got me thinking like you have to be okay where you are. And like you're saying, it plateaus at a certain point. So it's if you know that going in and you're okay with that, this can be a career. And I feel like we keep talking around what you I don't mean for this to just be a tangent the entire time, but this is a good conversation pointing back to like this can be a very sustainable business. And I mean, you prove that. I've done it for a little while. We both know a whole lot of people who have done that for a little while, but it's the systems you put in place and the expectations that you put upon yourself. And then are you happy doing it? All that said, the the business budget, and maybe this is just a completely different video at this point because we've been talking for a while, but that's okay. I love it. Um, but I mean, at least want to allude to it because some of the information that you put in the video that comes along with your template is super helpful. And I don't know if you want to go down that road or if we kind of want to continue where we're
Like
going.
just about the business budget thing.
I mean, I guess not even necessarily breaking down the budget itself, but maybe how you use it,
Yeah.
what other things in conjunction with that, because you mentioned a CPA. So if we're talking to somebody basically starting this thing out and putting those two things together, like, okay, well, we have like this business budget, but we also have a CPA. How do these two things work together? How do you make them work together? Um, Little things like invoicing, like you account for that and you talk about it in the video. I'd be curious to know like how do you physically deliver those?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I'm actually going to update that video because that was the first video that I did like a year or two ago when I was like, maybe this could help people. And
mhm.
that's what got me started on putting this whole pack together. So I've since updated it to be a Google Sheet instead of Excel because you can run scripts and APIs for sheets to talk to each other and
Mm.
also do some things within the sheets that are interesting. The bones of this,
Freak in the sheets, huh?
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh my goodness. Uh, the bones are the same and the usage is the same. So what I'll say is I started this business log back when I started mixing. I didn't put any of my assisting into that log because I think I missed it. But when I started mixing, I was like, I want to keep track of all the songs that I've mixed. And so it started at one row, and you just go down. But over the years, what it's done is I can look back at every year and every month, and I can see the wave of um,
Mm.
this was the busy season, and this was the lull, and this was the busy season, and every year has two humps. Like some it was different. Some was like a big ramp and then a down or whatever it is. But being able to analyze that is huge. Like see the ebbs and flows of your career, and then year over year, like there were 3 years where my mixing individually apart or well I guess with the guy that I was working with either way there were 3 years that were at like this income level and then the next year took a like almost doubled that and then it was 3 years at about that doubled amount and then there was another leap so I can look back and go oh certain career growths come in 3 year spurts or
Mm.
or I can look back and say like here's a chunk of time with this many songs per year at this rate and I made this much money compared to this year, those are very similar. And then there was a leap up. What happened? Like, what happened between this year and this year that might have caused a leap? Or was it the raised rate? Was it the more relationships, more songs? Which projects led to that? Like, who was it that was sending me that much work? And every year there's been kind of a top dog. Like, they've changed over. That's another thing that's been interesting is your top people who send you work might be different every year. And that doesn't mean like this is, I hope this doesn't come across as like business sleazy. I want to cultivate all relationships. Like there are people I love all over the industry that I've worked with. But for sure, if somebody hired you a lot in a previous year, it's like, dude, I'm taking you out to dinner. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to show you some special treatment because of how well you took care of me last year. And they may not be your top guy in the next year. Like I had a guy who was my top guy 2023, and I took him to lunch, and he's like, "Hey, I'm quitting A&R, going back to this thing." And I was like, "Dude, I loved working with you. Like, let's stay in touch." He's still in the music world, and that's awesome. Like, but it's not necessarily like I'm taking you out to lunch to expect that you're going to continue to be my top guy.
Yeah.
But just knowing who in your client list has done what with you for how many songs, for how many years, what it's looked like. Have these been label projects, indie projects, or these bands, like, are these individual artists? And comparing money versus songs, like, you keep track of so much. But the one last thing I'll really hone in on is in the year sheet, there's like a year, and it gives you like, for me, it's stereo mixing, Atmos mixing, combo, which is both of those together, mastering, engineering, producing, consulting, whatever it is. There's a list. And then my log populates that list of song numbers that correspond to those titles and month. And it's by month. And then there's one that's open. So like things that just haven't closed out yet in those categories, and then the total. And I can look at that and go, wow, like I'm doing a lot more. Like this has been true the past couple of years. I'm doing a lot more Atmos mixing than stereo mixing right now. And then I look over in this little section in the corner, and I've got our average hourly. How long does it take me to do this task for producing a song, for mixing Atmos, for mixing stereo? And I'm also accounting for prep time, archive time, the mixing time, tweaking time. So like generally, this is how much time is invested in the mix. So what happens is it comes out with an hourly rate because it's going to average how much money you've made and how many songs you've worked on. And it's going to average that and say, average, you're making this much per hour on mixing in stereo. And the realization of like, oh, I'm making this much in stereo, but I'm making this much hourly for Atmos. So that lets me know Atmos is more valuable in my operation than stereo mixing for the time. Like there's also a little percentage over here, and I'm sitting here like doing this because I know where the cells are. I'm sure like I could pop the sheet up real quick, but there is a percentage that will show how much of your income is coming in from this percentage of time. So let's say I'm spending a lot of time on producing, like, oh, we spent days and weeks on this song and it brought in 12% of my income. It's like, ooh, that's a big disparity, and you get to look at that and say, I either need to get faster and more efficient at this, I need to raise my rate, or I need to set this aside and focus on the more valuable things within my operation. So that's where this metric is really important, is you can look at your operation and say, like, here's how I need to adjust to make sure that all of this makes sense for me and my operation. Because if it doesn't make sense, like, you either need to scrap it or change something, You don't just need to keep saying yes to like, hey, can you tune this vocal for $20? Yes. And then you say no to this mix for 100. Like that time doesn't make sense. You know, eventually you got to start saying no to things that don't make sense so that you can say yes to these things that do. And that those metrics will help you like, all right, these are good. This is a good spread of work. All of these numbers seem to make sense. Or, wow, there's a major imbalance between how much time I spend on this versus what it's bringing in. But at the same time, I don't only want to mix Atmos. Like that's putting
Yeah.
one basket, a very risky basket at this point, you know? So I will force myself not to only do Atmos. Like even though it's like this is probably the most valuable thing of my operation, like I won't let it get over a certain amount without accounting for stereo, accounting for producing. Like I want to diversify what I do so that when some of this stuff dries up, like I have other things to pursue and other skills that I've been cultivating. And all of that I can see from the log. You know, like it sounds nerdy, but like you can look at it and go, okay, I'm on track. These goals that I set, like I can see the goals and I see how it's on track at its base level. Just being able to count how many songs you worked on in a year. You know, like I worked on these amount of songs for this amount of money. This was my average rate for the year. Cool. How does it compare to last year? Like, did it go up? Did it go down? Do I need to change something? So
Yeah. And that's something I don't keep track of nearly enough. What I do track is the percentages, and not to the degree you have, which I'm very excited about starting doing. But the other part of it is that I've found real value in on my own, even tracking a very small way that I do is realizing those pieces of your income, which as even starting out in this, like it's hopefully going to be diversified and you're going to dip your toes into a whole lot of different spots, but eventually finding those areas that don't bring you the same joy that some other areas do. And then if you can point to that and say, well, now that is not worth my time. And then that there's kind of a healthy aspect to that. Like you're kind of giving yourself a little bit of permission to cut ties with something that doesn't bring you joy in your job to that extent. That's, I guess that's a
yeah.
different way to think about it. But that was,
And also what you're talking about, it's the growing pains of finding where you are in your career. And I think, you know, it's one thing to just say no, but a healthy way beyond that, a little wisdom for people is if you're deciding you're not going to do this anymore, like tune vocals, like I'm not going to tune vocals anymore. I hate it. I'm not going to align drums anymore. So instead of just telling people, no, I don't do that anymore, you can either hire somebody in that can do that, and that's a valued part of your operation, or you develop a network of people who you know will help you. And of course, like as you grow in your career, there may be plenty of people that come up and say, hey, I'd love to like do something for you. Like, is there anything you need? Like, well, can you align drums? Can you tune vocals? And they're like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, all right, if anyone asks, I'll send them your way. So then when that person asks, you don't just say no, you say, but I'll find somebody who can. And you stay connected in their mind with the value that you bring to their operation. So all of that it's cultivating value. It's not just making music and working on cool stuff and achieving success, but it's like, how valuable can you be to this community? And if you're not the guy to do it, you find the person who can help do that for them. And you're cultivating value into the system, and it'll sustain itself. Like people will keep coming back to you like, hey man, I know you said you don't like tune vocals anymore, but like, do you know anybody who will mix this thing? And you're like, oh, well, I do that thing. What if I do that? You know, like, uh, I don't know. Again, hypothetical situations, probably there's millions that I could list, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
oh yeah. From a selfish standpoint, how do you do your invoicing? And I
yeah,
mean, I watched that video from 2022,
Yeah.
And it looked like people paid in different methods, but
So the new G Sheet thing is the business log is on G Sheets, and then I've got an invoice template on G Sheets. I've created custom scripts, which I would say if anybody needs to follow Andrew Sheps. So Andrew Sheps is a big proponent of kind of automating your workflow so that you don't have to think about certain things. Like he just geeks out about it too. So ChatGPT is a wonderful tool to help you navigate some things. It's built into the log and to the sheet, but there is going to be some configuration you have to do on your personal end because every sheet has a unique tag. So what you do is you tell these two sheets to talk to one another with their unique tags, and then there's a menu item that's just like create invoice, and it's going to pull up a dialog that says enter your date. So for all of these lines, these rows, I might have the invoice date of 2/1. So I usually invoice once a month. But even if I did it twice a month or just a one-off, like whatever dates are in there. So 2/1, let's say I've got 10 invoices for 2/1. I type in the date 2/1/25, and it's going to find all the rows that are in that invoice column marked as 2/1, and it's going to copy that information and dump it into my invoice template. And it there's a invoice template. It looks just like the business log, but it's like this is this invoice section, and you're going to check over and make sure those numbers are right. I would say go in the business log first and make sure those numbers are right.
Yeah.
I haven't always been great at that, where it's like, oh, whoops, like I was supposed to set that rate for that person. But then within the invoice template, there's a script that says process input. Now it's going to find all of those rows and create based on the sheet next to it called template. It's going to take the template, duplicate it that many rows deep, that many times. It's going to create the invoice number that's needed. It's going to put in all the information. So I built the script to do that, and you might have to do some tweaking, but generally it's 2 clicks. It's create invoice on the log and process input on the invoice sheet. Then you're left with a bunch of these sheets that you can check over, make sure it's right. And then there's one more, like export as PDF, and it will export each one of those to that year's invoices. So like the way that I did this before was Excel. I would copy the rows that I need and paste them into another Excel that did this process and linked up, however many sheets deep I needed. Each invoice gets a unique number, which is year, month, day. And then I would take all those and say, save as PDF. And it will save as PDF in my finances, invoicing, and then the years. I've got like the years deep. And so for 2025, there will be a January like Excel sheet, which is actually like the date that I invoice. It gives it that date. So if I did 2 in January, there might be January 1st set of invoices and like January 13th set of invoices. But then all those PDFs will be in there, and then I select one at a time and email to the clients. I would love to automate that process where whatever email is attached to the invoice, it just automatically
gets sent out.
Yeah. So you could probably always tweak it, but again, building a system takes time, and it's been evolving. Like I haven't gotten into this level of automation for 15 years. Like last year I was still manually like typing in my invoice stuff and then save as PDF and send. So now this is a little bit more automated, where that row of all that information that you put in from the client can almost automatically get generated into an invoice template, and then you just send that to the person. And once that gets paid, I mark it on the log. It like clears out and changes from open to closed. And then one more thing that I haven't even said in these videos is I have a Google form that has a lot of this let me see. It's got a lot of information on it, like what's your name, what's the client's or what's the artist's name, how many songs, what's your rate, and so like they get to fill out all the information that would go on that business log. I haven't asked anyone to do it yet because like it does almost feel pretentious to be like, hey, fill all this information out for me.
Yeah.
Do all that. But for mixing or producing, I don't know that makes a ton of sense. Especially if you're working more on a like a community network basis. If you're doing that kind of like website in thing, more of the online work from people, um, that might be more beneficial. I know a lot of mastering guys have that, where it's like someone reaches out for an inquiry and they're like, fill all this information out about your track. Where also the client can put in ISRC codes and other things that are important for that project, and then it generates it generates a thing in their log. It generates folders on Dropbox for them. It generates some emails that go back to the client, and gets things ready in their world, all from a program called Zapier. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, but I've never gone down this deep with it.
Yeah, and it,
That's so cool.
I asked some Zapier consultants about some things with mine, and it felt a little grand. Um, but I know that they could help with other things. I feel like I did it myself. You know what I mean? That was the conclusion, is like, well, I really only need the automation for these things right now, and then I can expand from there. But definitely, if you've got multiple services like Dropbox, this email thing, this chain, this program, and you want Zapier to kind of like direct the traffic on all of that code, it's worth it to get a consultant and an expert. Pay them $1,000 and say, put this system together for me. These are my goals.
So cool.
Put this together. This is, I know it's getting in the weeds, but I'll just say, like, being intentional. It goes back to being intentional about the way that you have your things set up, and then repeating that and tweaking it over time is how you run a sustainable business, and have the metrics to know what to do and what to adjust.
And it is weeds, but we're audio guys. Like this, we'll get back to the fun stuff we want to do.
Well, dude, that goes to it, man. It's like eventually someone had to write down sheet music, because it's like, oh, it might be helpful for us to remember this, so we're going to put it in this notation form so that it's a language to be translated. Like, so many people just aren't talking about this, that even though it may sound geeky, like, you're just looking at one guy's opinion on how he built the structure of his career, but it's worked for me, and I think it'll work for other people. But there are very few successful people who at least don't have a team around them who have managed to organize their world. Like, you can't just be chaotic. Like, there is no such thing as a song that was written and no one ever wrote it down, recorded it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, like the arrogance of, oh, I'm just going to play the song and remember it forever.
Saying like one guy's opinion, and that is like just the thing with your template too. Like, yes, this is one guy's template, but having worked on it, I very quickly made it my own. Like, working from a framework that works for you, it translates, man, and it's really cool. And that's what I like about your brain, and I keep wanting to tap into it. Last couple questions, maybe to put a bow on this thing, because I want to respect your time, dude. So with the Google Sheets thing, are you going to replace that in the templates, and then like the snacks that are available on your website?
So there's going to be both. There's going to be the Excel sheet as it was left, which is really close to the G sheet. But yeah, there's 2 more G sheets in there now, and I've got to make a new video on some of the newer features showing what I just said.
Do you, with your business budget template, do you utilize anything else like a QuickBooks or anything to be that kind of like middle ground between this and your CPA?
I've never done that only because when I started, I didn't want to pay for QuickBooks or because usually, you'd have to pay for something like that. And I was like, well, I can put things in a spreadsheet. But over time, I learned the knowledge of what to include. So there were definitely 3 years there with my CPA where I was like, okay, like this is the information I have. What am I missing? Like, do I need, like, what are some extra things I can include? And so obviously I started keeping track of mileage. I started keeping track, like in my budget, like for my bank accounts, whenever I put those logs in there, if there was something that was like coffee or a meeting somewhere, I can sit there and say it was this part of town. It calculates the mileage and does a round trip. So it's like boom, 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 took this car 40 something miles. And so it logs it into that budget. And then at the end, there's a tax sheet, which over time I had to figure out what goes on the tax prep sheet. But I mean, it includes everything: operating expenses, rental expenses, gear expenses, things that might depreciate over time. I mean, yeah, what I've paid like someone else, contractors, like my assistants.
The only reason I'm asking this is that's, again, a very selfish question, because I mean, I could see if you're starting something, this is a cool starting point. For me, you providing this in your template literally probably is going to save me a few $100 a year just right off the top. Just getting rid of QuickBooks, because looking through this, like, I don't think I need it anymore. Like,
well, and I can't speak to what QuickBooks has because I've never used it, but I just
awfully
know
similar.
Based on the conversations I've had with my CPA, and you pay an extra hour for that CPA's time to really explain it to you. All right, you're going to set up an LLC and you're going to do these things, or you're going to set up the S corp and do these things. When you have the log, you keep track of it. And sure, maybe one year you miss it. You're like, oh, I forgot to log this thing, so I can't really include it in this year. But yeah, like I've never had to, like, I don't care about 1099s because I don't have to get a 1099 from anybody to know what they paid me for the year. And then I just tell my CPA, here's the number. This is what came in. This is what went out. This is how much I put in savings or retirement or investment. And
I've said that to so many people that I've consulted with over the years. You should not, like, a 1099 should never surprise you at the end of the year, no matter how many you get. Like, that should not surprise you.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever really, and that's the other thing. I don't know that I've ever really reported a 1099. Like if I get it in the mail, like I'll put it in a file cabinet, but I don't give it to my CPA. Like I'm running my business with integrity. If I don't get a 1099, I'm not like, "Ooh, I get to keep that off my return." Yeah, like you follow the log, and you're prepared,
dude. I feel like we covered a ton of stuff, not necessarily what we intended on covering, but I love it. Thanks so much, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Have a good rest of your evening.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. Since you made it this far, why not head over to Warren's site, linked below, and check out his videos and tools. After that, you can watch this video where we dive into his Pro Tools template.